So in this class, we are going to be talking about the ethics and the ethical questions and the ethical standards that are involved in being a human services provider. So let's begin by just even asking, well, what are ethics? It's one of those things, you know it when you see it, but how hard is it to explain? Well, basically, ethics are designed as a kind of moral philosophy or a code of morals that a person or a group practices. In the act of practicing these codes of morals, it's deciding how people will make decisions and behave and lead their lives. And the study of ethics is concerned with trying to figure out what's good and bad, what are right and what are wrong human actions. Now, many professional associations like healthcare workers and lawyers have their own codes and standards of behavior within their profession. And the National Association for Human Services has created ethical standards for the human services professionals. We don't have to make this up. And these ethical standards concern your, as the human service workers, responsibilities to a number of different groups. Your responsibilities to your clients, to the general public and society, to your colleagues, to your employer, to students you may have, to yourself, and even to the profession of human service workers. So we're going to take a look just at the standards for working with your client. But this does not excuse you from going into the readings and really reading in detail every standard. This is just a very quick overview. And interestingly, the very first standard talks about you building upon the client and the community's strengths. It doesn't say that you're going to fix things. It doesn't say even that you're supposed to help. It says the most important standard is that you are building on their strengths. You understand, acknowledge the strengths, and help them use them. Standard 2, informed consent, means that you cannot do anything unless the person you are working with understands it and formally agrees that this is what you're going to do, and that this person has the right at any time, for no reason at all, to withdraw their consent. Number 3, your client has the right to total privacy and confidentiality. And easy as that sounds, you're going to see that at times that can really bump up against some really tricky ethical questions. Now, one way is Standard 4, which is that you also are responsible to protect the safety of your client and others. So what you do if you suspect your client might want to hurt him or herself or hurt someone else, you now have to balance these two standards. Standard 5 says you must avoid multiple relationships with the client. In this case, it might be personal relationships. You should not have a client that you are a friend with, or that you know from your neighborhood, or someone you're doing business with. And number 6 is much more specific. Absolutely, any sexual or romantic relationships between the helper and the client is absolutely prohibited. No exceptions, anytime. Standard 7 ensures that you are responsible, that your values and biases are not being imposed upon the client. And yeah, sure, we all agree with that, but we often don't even know our own values or biases because that's the way we were brought up. That's how everybody around us feels. And when we begin to work with people from different cultures, different nationalities, religious groups, different regions of the country, we can be very surprised that our values and biases are bumping up against something we do not understand. Standard 8 just requires you to protect the safety and security of all records about this client from ever being accessed by anyone else. And Standard 9 continues that, but moves into how you are going to store and communicate electronic data about the person. So, what's the big deal with this? I mean, I agree with these standards. I'm sure you agree with these standards. They all seem perfectly straightforward. They all make sense. But in real life, so many situations you're going to encounter and so many issues fall into these kind of gray areas. There's cultural differences in understanding the same thing. And sometimes it feels that the standards are in conflict with each other. So the easiest way to explore this is to let's go look at a couple of examples. Okay, an ethical dilemma. Let's talk about you, the human service worker, receiving small gifts from the person you're working with. Now, it might be the holiday season, a special occasion, maybe a milestone, and your client may want to thank you for your hard work and help by giving you a little gift. Now, that situation can be much more complicated because there are cultural, social, and relationship factors to consider on top of the bond that you and your client share. So some of the ethical principles involved is there's an importance of human relationships. Rejecting the gift because you're not supposed to accept things of value from your client may make the person feel bad, ruin the rapport you've built over years, leave the person feeling like you're personally rejecting them. But you are also ethically required not to profit from this relationship or to take advantage of the fact that this is not an equal relationship. This client is dependent on you. And you've got to figure out where are the healthy and appropriate boundaries in professional relationships. As you're going to see in each of these examples, there isn't a simple, clear-cut message standard that says never or it's okay, but these are why it's a dilemma. Breaches of confidentiality with a minor client. You're working with an adolescent and they say, "You're not going to tell my mom, are you?" Wow. What are some of the ethical values and principles involved? One is about the dignity and the worth of the person. We want to support the right to self-determination, decision-making, even in our young clients. There's the importance of this relationship. If you breach the child's confidentiality, that you may break their trust and never be able to move forward with them. And there's a matter of integrity. We have to behave in a trustworthy manner, not only with our clients, but with their families and their communities. How can you be trustworthy to both a young client and their parents? And then sometimes you're required by law not only to report certain things to parents, but to the Department of Social Services and law enforcement. Again, this is why it's an ethical dilemma, because there's so many things going on at once here. How about the commission of an illegal act? So, a client discloses to you that he or she has broken the law. Now, some of the ethical values and principles involved, again, the importance of this relationship and trust is paramount. If you report that your client has done some illegal activity, this is totally in conflict with the relationship. But we must always practice in a way that is honest and responsible, and we also must obey the laws and policies of the community, our society, and the agencies we serve. And it becomes very difficult around questions of justice. Sometimes a law may seem totally unfair, or your client's situation is just super precarious, especially if he's experienced discrimination and injustice in the past, and we know how common that can be. All right, so what would you do in any of these situations? You can't just turn to the code of ethics and click off the one that's going to answer what to do. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, talk to your supervisor and or your colleague. Someone is above you, someone is making more money than you because they have to own the problem. There's a very funny common reaction many of us have when faced with these kind of problems is to hide them, hold them inside. We don't want to show weakness. We don't want to show that we don't know what to do. We're torn on ourselves. We don't want to hear advice that we might not like. Skip it. You're not sure what to do? You talk to your supervisor and maybe other colleagues. And then you document. You write up everything. You write the situation. You write up your various feelings, where you see the conflict. You write up what your supervisor said. Document everything. Identify what is the problem. Sort it out, clean it up in your own mind a bit. Writing it out will help you clarify your thoughts. And explore all the different options. If you do this, what might happen if you do that? Get it all down on paper. What are the pros and cons of each thing you might do? And then you either choose an option or you're following the option that your supervisor tells you to do. And you never, ever break the law or break agency policies. If you have to quit, if you feel you must, then you do. But you do not break the law ever, and you never actively just go against agency policies. This is really tough stuff. You are not in it alone, and that's why your team is so critical to you.